Good evening. Welcome to my Wednesday night Bible study. I'm Douglas Griffin. We are studying Matthew, the book of Matthew, chapter 25. We spent 19 weeks on chapter 24. Whew. But now we're in Matthew chapter 25. I do want to start with where we left off, just reminding you that Jesus has been, excuse me, at the Pharisees for quite a while now and warning them of coming judgment. Got into a little bit of a fight with them. Okay. In the temple. Then he left the temple. Well, I'm going to leave this temple then. And he went, okay, see this temple, all these stones, they're all going to come crumbling down. And the disciples would go, well, when's this going to happen? And we'll get into, they knew what he was talking about. They just want to know when it was going to happen because he kind of previewed this sort of thing. Well, when's that? What? Okay. So Jesus, as you know, we've gone through this long explanation of exactly what the signs would be of his coming and the sign of the end of the age that they were currently living in, and when the new age was going to begin, the age of the Gentile age, and um, and so Jesus gave them all the different look for this and that and this and beware of. Okay, so he ends the chapter 24, the first part of his discourse, the first half of it, with these warnings. It says, of that day and hour, no one knows. Now, as usual, I did not check to see if this is public or not. What I could do. Oh, I know. I'll just keep talking, and in a minute, it'll show up. If you got 1 minute to say hi, to say hello, and then I'll know that this is, excuse me, happening. But I am 1 minute ahead of you. So in 90 seconds, I'll see something there, or I'll start over. It's no big deal. Okay, so in Matthew chapter 24, verse 36, so we're just going to go to at the end. He says, but of this hour, of this day and hour, no one knows, not even this angels of heaven, but my Father only. So he's the only one who knows. Remember that because that's important in the story that's coming up about the 10 virgins. Okay, but as the days of Noah were, so also will be the coming of the Son of Man. So it's going to be exactly the same. What part is the same? He says, for as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered the ark. So Noah's warning them for like 100 years. Noah's preaching, warning, there's a flood coming. And they go, what's the flood? We don't even know what you're talking about. And making fun of him. They're eating, they're drinking, they're having a good time. Finally, the flood comes along. It says, and they did not know until the flood came and took them all away. That's talking about taking away the bad guys. So also will be the coming of the Son of Man. Okay, it'll be the same way. You won't be paying any attention. You'll ignore the warnings that I'm giving, and then judgment will come on you and take you away. So that taking away is talking about the bad guys. It says 2 men will be in the field. He also in Luke included the warning you talked about. Just like in Sodom and Gomorrah, they were eating and drinking and having a good time, and then judgment came on them and took the bad guys away. So he says, then 2 men will be in the field and one will be taken away and the other left. That taken away still applies to the bad guy. He didn't suddenly change. For some reason, people read this and think, oh, that's the church. No, it's not. It's the bad guys. They're taken away. He says, 2 women will be grinding at the mill. One will be taken and the other left in judgment. So watch, therefore, you do not know what hour the Lord is coming, but know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed the house be broken into. So again, he's warning of a bad thing coming. This is not a wonderful thing. The master knew when the bad news, he would have watched. So he's saying, so watch, therefore, be ready, for the Son of Man is coming in an hour you don't expect. So that's a warning to people who are just going to not be taking him seriously and who are just going to be laughing and carrying on. Okay. I am still waiting to see a comment show up to say, yes, we are watching you. So don't be mad if I start over. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his master made ruler over his household, to give them food in due season. So who's faithful then? Because he just said, don't be like the bad guys and eating and drinking, and then get caught up in judgment when all the bad stuff happens. Because I told you the armies are going to surround all this bad. Who's faithful and wise? Okay. Blessed is he that servant whom his master, when he comes, will find so doing what he's given assignment to do. And Jesus has given them assignment. And this leads into the next part. People think that Jesus just started talking about something totally different when he gives the parable of the 10 virgins, but he's comparing the people who are just eating, drinking, and goofing around, not doing what they're supposed to do, getting in trouble. He's comparing them with the wise and faithful servant. Oh, good. Good. Okay. So with the wise and faithful servant who is doing what he's been given assignment to do. So that's the comparison that's about to happen with the 10 virgins, which we'll explain in just a minute. Either you're drinking, messing around, and you're not paying attention, or you're doing what he told you to do. So he says, so assuredly, I say to you that the master will make him ruler over all his goods. The wise and faithful servant, when he shows up, he's going to reward that person. Here's your reward. But if that evil servant says in his heart, thank you, Melita. Okay, if that evil person says in his heart, my master's late, and thank you, Cheryl. Okay, my master is delaying his coming, and begins to beat his fellow servants and to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come in a day when he's not looking for him, and an hour that he's not aware of, and will cut him in two and appoint him with his portion with the hypocrites. And there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So these are the two choices. There's a servant he's on assignment, he's doing what he's supposed to do, and then the ones who's goofing off. Okay. When judgment comes. Now, I guess, and there's an application for all of our lives, but Jesus is very concerned there is a Holocaust coming. Hundreds of thousands of Jews are about to be slaughtered in 40 years. That's all he's thinking about. This is not just a general, we can apply it generally, obviously. We want to be doing what God wants, goofing off, but he's saying this judgment is coming. And if you're not paying attention, if you get caught up with you're going to be here when judgment comes instead of doing what I sent you out to do. And because they very much wanted to stay in Jerusalem was this gorgeous city. It was the crown jewel of Israel. No one wanted to leave. But Jesus is saying, no, you got to go to these places that you're scared to go. You need to get out of Jerusalem. You're going to be in trouble. To the disciples. So he's warning them now, don't be here and get caught up in all the madness that's going on here. Don't go to the Capitol, and then because you're going to get caught up in what's going on, and so, what's going on, right? Like, I didn't know. Don't get caught up, right? So you may have innocent motives, but if you're here when all that happens, you're going to get caught up in it. All right. So we're about to start. So that's the end of Matthew 24. We're about to start Matthew 25. I just want to remind us of some things that Jesus said earlier, because he's having the same conversation with them now. He's continuing this. Back in Matthew chapter 10, when Jesus gave them assignments, because he's just their teacher to prepare them to go out. If you go to medical school, if you go to law school, engineering school, you're just there long enough to get what you need to know and then go out and do. You're not supposed to stay. So Jesus knows, I've got these guys for 3.5 years. I'm preparing them so they can go out and preach the gospel. That's all. And because they don't even understand. This is just a 3.5-year course. And then I'm leaving. The teacher's leaving and they've got to go. So they think they're just going to follow me around for the next 30 years, but no. So he's explaining stuff to them and urging them, please don't stay. You got to go. But here's how the assignment went. Here's how he first introduces it. In Matthew chapter 10, starting with verse 5, he says, they name all the disciples. And then it says, these 12 Jesus sent out. So he's sending them out. But here's how he's sending them out. Like you're a lawyer, you're in law school, and your teacher says, okay, so when you go to court, make sure you dress properly, make sure you address the judge instantly. He's saying, once we're finished, do this. A teacher will talk like their students and talk to their students telling them what to do once the course is over. And sometimes they talk to them as though they're just about to do it any minute now. So you might be in medical school and your teacher says, okay, when you see the patient, you got to have a certain manner, and you want to ask them questions and not just make assumptions about what it is. And well, they're not about to do that in 5 minutes, but he's just explaining this is how to handle it once I release you, right? So Jesus is saying the same thing. So he sends them out, but he doesn't mean instantly you're going to just, I'm going to give you a little bit and then bring you back, and then a little, and then eventually though, I'm sending you out. So he says, so these 12 Jesus sent out for a trial run and commanded them, saying, do not go into the way of the Gentiles. Do not enter the city of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. This was an important assignment, and Jesus had the same assignment for himself. It was prophesied that they had to go to the children of Israel first. Don't go to the Samaritans. Do not go to the Gentiles. Make sure you go here so that they are without excuse. Because if you skip over them and go to the Gentiles, then on Judgment Day, they'll be able to stand before God and say, well, nobody told me nothing. And they'll be right. So start here with them. Jesus had the same assignment. The prophecies said that he would come to the house of Israel. So when the Syrophoenician woman sent word, and please come to my daughter, Jesus saying, I can't. I'm called to the house of Israel. And he literally could not do that. He knew at some point his disciples were going to then go to the Gentiles. There was a point when they'd be released from preaching to the Jews only, and they'd be able to preach to the Gentiles. That point was when Stephen was martyred. After Jesus was crucified, after the day of Pentecost, 3.5 years after the crucifixion, exactly 3.5 years, Stephen is preaching and prophesying, and he has a vision of heaven, and he tells them that the temple, they're no longer supposed to use the temple, but that Jesus was the final sacrifice, and that was the final prophecy given to the Jews. That was, Stephen was the final prophet sent to the Jews. And we think of him as a deacon, but he prophesied to them, and just like Jesus said to the Pharisees, you martyr and you murder all the prophets sent to you, and that's going to get you in trouble someday. Stephen was the final one, and after Stephen, then Paul shows up on the scene, and then now it's time for the Gentiles to get the word, and they were done. I washed my hands of preaching to the non-believing Jews. Obviously, there were Jews who still kept believing, but they were no longer obligated to stay in Jerusalem. They were now released. But when he first talks to them, he says, do not go anywhere else but to the Jews in Jerusalem, but rather go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Stay in these confines. Don't go to the Samaritans, right? And as you go, preach, saying, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. That's a key phrase again, the kingdom of heaven. You're telling people that what you've been waiting for to enter into, it's now available to you. That's what you're saying. That when you say the kingdom of heaven is at hand, they were waiting for a physical kingdom. Jesus was offering them a spiritual kingdom. We are in some of us are in the kingdom of heaven. In order to be in the kingdom of heaven, you have to have a king, and you have to be under his leadership. So whenever we are doing what Jesus tells us to do, he's our king. When we're doing our own thing, he's not our king, or at least we're just disobedient subjects. Okay, and so he's saying, if you are part of my kingdom, I am now your king, and you're listening to the Holy Spirit in your heart, and you're following his orders. There's some people who never do that. They can wear a cross, they can carry a big Bible. They have never let Jesus tell them what to do. And that is kind of what his whole thing is about, the faithful servant who's doing what I'm telling him to do, and the one who isn't. And you'll see how that comes up. That's very important to Jesus. I'm not just making it up. It's important to him. Okay, so tell them that the kingdom of heaven is at hand, and you can be part of it. Heal the sick, cleanse the lepers, raise the dead, cast out demons. Freely have you received, freely give. So that part sounded great. It's like, yay, I want to do that. All of that sounds great. Let's go. Where do we go to sign up? But, verse 17, beware of men, for they will deliver you up to councils and scourge you in their synagogues, whip you. So Jesus, after saying, go out and heal the sick, but here's part two. You're also going to get whipped and beaten in synagogues. You will be brought before governors, verse 18, and kings for my sake, as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. A brother, this is verse 21, brother will deliver a brother to death, and father his child, and children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death, and you will be hated by all for my name's sake. So they're going like, whoa, you said heal the sick and raise the dead, but now you're saying we're going to be hated and thrown in prison and beat. They're not clear if they want to do that or not, right? But that's part of their assignment. That is not part of our assignment. Jesus is not, unless he speaks to you, he may speak to you and show up in your room and say, well, I'm sending you to the farthest reaches of Orange County. And I'm going to, they're going to, whatever. And then that's fine. But that's not the general life of a Christian. But that was their assignment. And that's who he's addressing at the temple. He's saying, okay, when he's talking about the 10 virgins, because he's afraid that the disciples are going to get stuck. Because hearing all the good stuff, they're like, yay, we can't wait. But hearing all the bad stuff that's about to happen, they may not want to go out, right? So they're going to put you to death. You'll be hated by all for my name's sake. But he who endures to the end will be saved. So if you just keep doing what I tell you, you'll be saved. When they persecute you in this city, just flee to another. Oh, that sounds fun. For assuredly I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. So he had just said that a few days earlier, right? And so they're not sure, because it's them, go out and heal the sick, raise the dead, but you're going to be beaten and thrown in prison, and they're going to persecute you, and you're going to have to flee, but won't it be fun? So they're not clear. Do I want to do that? That doesn't sound like fun. So when Jesus says, well, time's coming for judgment and all these stones are going to be thrown down, they're going to like, well, when is this going to happen? And what's going to be the sign? Because we need to prepare ourselves for this day, because we're not sure if we're ready to really complete this assignment. That's much harder than I thought, right? Okay, so after he tells them all this terrible stuff and how to recognize when the end is coming, and some of them are thinking, well, I'll just hold out until right before the end, and then I'll go do all this stuff. I think I'll just hide here in Jerusalem, because who wants to go through persecutions and beatings and whippings, and who wants to do that? So just tell me when the end's coming. You will recognize this because we asked the teacher, when's the final? Because I'm going to delay studying until the day before the final. Or when do I have to do, we always want to know when is the due date so that we can figure out our time and see how much we can get away, procrastinate, and do nothing until we actually have to get done whatever is asked of us to do. So that's just human nature. When do you want us to go out and get beaten and get persecuted? Okay, when's the end coming? That's part of the reason for asking, when is the end coming? Because if we can just wait until right before you get back and then do it, then we can save ourselves a whole lot of trouble. I found out when I was teaching and went to a teacher's conference that you can leave high school kids alone if there's an emergency with an assignment. Like if you have to go down to the principal because a kid's sick, or you have to do something, give them an assignment and you can leave and come back, because people say, oh, you can never leave your, but okay, but what if somebody's bleeding, or what if there's an emergency? So we found out, oh yeah, you can leave. And one time I had to leave, so I gave them an assignment. So I went down one direction, but I decided to come back the other direction to see who's going to be doing the assignment and sure enough, there's like 5 kids out in the hallway looking in the direction that I had left and not knowing I was coming up behind them with a stick. But we'll just discuss that later. I didn't touch anybody, that. But anyway, and that's how that's why the angels said when Jesus ascended, why are you looking up into heaven, staring up? Why aren't you doing what he asked you to do? Because Jesus come back with a stick, with a nail in it. No. So just be about your assignment and you won't have to worry about judgment. Because he knows why some of these disciples are asking, when is the end? Because they're thinking, well, we'll just wait till he's about to come back. And then, because that's what they were going to do. Okay, he's coming back. And then they were going to rush and start doing the assignments. And it's like, no, it's too late now. You should have been doing it while when I gave the assignment. So they got in trouble. All right. So here's his next sentence after he's saying, after that last part that I read, here's the start of Matthew chapter 25. Jesus didn't say chapter break. He just kept talking. This chapter break is the decision of the editors of the Bible, but Jesus just kept talking. So here's the very next thing he says. Then the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. So I get to tell you the story of Jewish weddings. Here's how the whole engagement process went, which is different than ours. Two families decide they're going to join together. It's the parents decide that looks like a good family. I know their family tree. We've got a son. Let's approach that family. And when their kids are little, this happens, and we will join with them. And obviously, this is not happening today, and except in very Orthodox Jewish circles. But back in the old days, and that's not a bad idea. Check out that because you would look at the family, and that's a reflection sometimes on the kids and how they're going to turn out. So they would check out the family. Just like it's a good family, my son, we want them to marry your daughter. Cool. So then when they get a certain age, the son would go and he asks for the father's hand. Even though it's already been prearranged, he goes through the motions of asking the father for the daughter's hands, and then he asks her. And from that moment on, they're betrothed, period. In fact, it can only end in divorce is the only way to get out of that. Once he's asked her to marry him, as far as everyone's concerned, they're betrothed, done. And so he then goes and learns a trade. Let's say his father's a carpenter or something like that. So he learns a trade. She's getting ready herself and learning all the ways how to do whatever she's going to do with the family. Cook, raise kids. I'm talking about in those days. Today, she'd be training to be a doctor and he'd be trying to learn how to cook. But back then, they delegated the duties that way. So he learns how to build and he begins to work on his house. He's preparing a place for her. And he builds his house and he's built, and her friends are coming and watching and giving her work. And he doesn't know the date. No one knows the date when he's going to be finished. But once he's finished and has that house built for her, then he takes his friends and they start the parade down the street, and the wedding happens, because as far as they're concerned, once she said yes, that's it. They're married in every way except for the ceremony. So he doesn't know when he's going to be finished. The friends come, they give word to her, oh, looks like it's almost ready. They can see the signs. That's what Jesus says. You can see the sign. You may not know the exact day or hour, but you can tell the signs. So keep getting ready. Keep getting ready. Well, she has 10 friends who are virgins who are going to dance at their wedding. Once the groom comes and picks her up and they go to the ceremony and they have dinner with they do all this cool ceremony stuff like this. I actually got to see one once. And then they have dinner with family friends, and then there's a bigger celebration for the whole community. At that celebration, the bride and groom sit in the center after they do the chair thing and all that stuff. And then the 10 virgins with their torches, they dance around them. Now, the torch only stays lit for like 10, 15 minutes. So you have to keep dipping it in the oil to keep it lit. And so you have to have oil, obviously, to do this whole elaborate ceremony. 10 friends, and they dance around. So the 10 friends do not know when he's going to show up and be finished with his house, because he's just going to say, okay, that's it. And then they grab his friends and they're just going to head toward the bride. And she's supposed to be ready. So she doesn't know the day nor the hour, but she's been getting ready ever since he proposed. So she's supposed to be ready. And those 10 friends are supposed to be ready. Now, notice the bride is not mentioned in this parable. This is not a parable specifically about Jesus coming for the church. This is something different. These 10 virgins had a specific assignment that had been given to them to do. They had something they're supposed to do at the celebration, and they had to have oil in their lamps in order to do it, right? And they call them a lamp, but this word is really for torch. It's the kind of torches that they use when they're chasing down Frankenstein, right? I am not an animal, right? Right? Frankenstein, how dare you look different than us? So it's really a torch. But they've got to have that beaker of oil. They're totally screwed. All right. So the kingdom of heaven shall be likened to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom, right? Like, oh, he's coming. He's coming. Now, 5 of them were wise and 5 were foolish. Let's look at the real differences, right? Those who were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them. Now, I'll be like, duh. Why don't you have oil for your lamp? Because it's only going to last 10 minutes. By the time you get to the place, now you've got your light's not going to be able to shine. Right? But the wise took oil in their vessels with them. But while the bridegroom was delayed, because they don't know when he's coming, but once that house looks like it's almost done, because I go to prepare a place for you, right? He's preparing a place for his bride. That's why Jesus is using these examples and these words, because they would totally be able to relate to it. They're just sitting and waiting. They're just waiting. Okay, it could be tonight. It could be tomorrow. It could be the next day. They just got a torch. All right. While the room was late, they all slumbered and slept. Now, the slumbered and sleep part is not the problem. We just think those lazy virgins who with no oil, they slept. No, they all slept, because you can't just stay awake for 4 days. Sleeping is not the problem. Getting rest, because they had a big long night that's going to come up where they had to do all this stuff. That's not the problem. Problem was the oil. Okay, so we're going to discuss what the oil is. But Paul uses the same example because Paul heard this sermon of Jesus. I had this whole theory about Paul, and because Paul, was a Pharisee, and the Pharisees were always attacking Jesus, and Paul was around Jesus and heard a lot of what Jesus said because he quotes him a lot. Okay, but at the time, he was listening in order to trip him up, but the words were still sinking in. Okay, so in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, Paul's writing obviously to the Thessalonians, and he says in the first verse, "But concerning the times of the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you." And that means exactly when he's coming back. And don't forget, after Jesus died, they don't know when the coming of the Lord is going to be. The entire New Testament, and possibly the book of Revelations, was written before 70 AD. The book of Revelations is the controversial one. Was it written in the 60s or in the 90s? Big controversy about that. But the whole rest of it was written before 70 AD. And so they're still waiting for this thing called the coming of the Lord. When's that coming? And so he says, concerning the times and the seasons, brethren, you have no need that I should write to you. For you yourselves know perfectly that the day of the Lord so comes as a thief in the night. You know that because that's what Jesus said. If the master had known when the thief was coming, he would have been prepared, right? So he's saying, that's how he described himself. He just comes like a thief. So you're either up all night waiting for the thief, or you're going to be asleep and the thief's going to show up. Okay, so he comes at the thief in the night. For when they say peace, safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them. So he's explaining again, don't be caught up. Don't be in Jerusalem. And Jesus is telling them, because people just want to stay in Jerusalem. They want to be comfortable. Don't stay in Jerusalem. Go out and do what God has told you to do. We have to go out and do what God told us to do. Don't get comfortable in Jerusalem. And he keeps telling them that. And that's his fear. You're going to just get caught up. So when they say peace and safety, then sudden destruction comes upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, because she doesn't know the day nor the hour. Even today, with all her technology, you don't know exactly when. You can kind of get close to it, but suddenly, this is it, right? And they shall not escape. But you, brethren, are not in darkness, so that this day should overtake you as a thief. You are all sons of light and sons of the day. So we're not of the night or of darkness. So he's separating the two. And listen, it's interesting because he piggybacks on Jesus' example, because they were all sleeping. They all slept. Sleeping wasn't the problem. It was the oil. So listen to how Paul uses that same example. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do. Don't sleep the way they sleep. So he's going to describe how they sleep. And those who get drunk are drunk. Oh, I'm sorry. Therefore, let us not sleep as others do, but let us watch and be sober. So does he mean we can never sleep? No, here's how they sleep. It says, for those who sleep at night. That's the time that you're supposed to sleep. You sleep at night. But those who are drunk get drunk at night. So at the time you're supposed to be sleeping, this is Paul's example. We all know it's okay to sleep at night, but they're drunk all night, right? And he's about to say, and then when the day comes and it's time for you to do their job, that's when they're sleeping. And so they're missing it. But let us who are of the day be sober, putting on the breastplate of faith and love, and as a helmet of the hope of salvation. So we don't want to be like them. We're creatures of the day. This is how he's using it. God gives us work to do in the day, and at night, because in their nighttime, where they didn't have street lamps, it got pitch black at night. So you couldn't do anything. So you had to work while it was day. Jesus says, work while it's day because the night's coming. He says, they're drunk all night. So they're sleeping during the day. And that's when God is, so they're missing God's appointment. God has an appointment for them of when to do what they're supposed to do. But they're sleeping and missing it. So he's saying, if you're sober and you're up and you're doing what God tells you to do during the time period he tells you to do it, then you'll be ready when he comes. But if you're out screwing around and everything, then you're going to be asleep when he comes and you're going to miss it. And Paul's example is about being ready at the appointed time. He's not saying you can't sleep. You just have to be ready when it comes. So Jesus, in his analogy of the virgins, it says they all slumbered and slept. No problem. The 10 wise and the foolish, they're all sleeping. But here was the problem. He says, at midnight a cry was heard, in verse 6 of Matthew 25. At midnight a cry was heard, behold, the bridegroom is coming. Go out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps, right? Because, oh, he's coming. Finally, we've been sitting here for 5 days. They had no idea when he was coming. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. Well, yeah, because we're all lighting our lamps. And now they're making their way to where the celebration is going to be. And they're running out of, so give us some of your oil. And Jesus, and so here's their answer. We're thinking, oh, aren't they selfish? But you can't give somebody your oil. We all have our own assignments. So the wise answer is saying, no, there should not be enough for us and you. So that we're not going to be able to do what we do if we spend our time giving our oil to you, and then none of us are going to be able to clean. So you have to go get your own oil. So we all have our own assignments. We all have to be prepared. What is the oil? What does the oil stand for? What does the oil stand for? That's the difference. Oil is the important thing, not sleeping. Okay. But the wise answer is saying, no, there should be not enough for you, us and you, but go rather to those who sell and buy for yourselves. So you should have had your oil prepared. Now you're going to have to spend your time going out. So here's another example that Paul gave similarly in 2 Thessalonians, verse 3. So here's the two things that Jesus is afraid of, is that there are people who think he's delaying his coming, so they're going to be goofing around. Oh, that teacher went off to the principal's office and he's going to be gone for a long time, and let's just party. There are those people who are partying the whole time. And then there are the people, interestingly enough, who think, well, he's coming back in any minute, so I might as well not do anything because it could be any minute. And I heard this, someone asked me this in 1995 while I was teaching. They rose their hand and said, if Jesus is coming back any minute, because that's what their pastor was teaching, he's coming back at any minute, why get married? Why even go to college? You know, why should I? And I said, he's not coming back any minute. That is a total misunderstanding of the scriptures. And I'm sure your pastor is wonderful, but people are reading all of that incorrectly. And they think when Israel becomes a nation, Jesus never said anything. And when Israel becomes a nation again and rebuilds the temple, nope. That is something that we've made up. It sounds really cool, but there is no more. Jesus is the temple. He's the final sacrifice. God doesn't want us to build the temple again and start sacrificing at the temple. He's not. Why? That would teach the opposite lesson. He wants to teach everybody that Jesus was the final sacrifice, not the blood of sheep and goats is going to cure you. It's not. And it never did. That's what the writer of Hebrews says. It never did work. You know, you had to keep going in every day and kill more sheep every single day. But Jesus, that's life eternal. You know, once you accept him, then that's done. So he's not going to try to reinstitute something that's going to teach wrong lessons. But this guy's like paranoid. I'm not even applying to college because my pastor said Jesus might come back at any minute. So what's the point? And that's the other fear of people who will do nothing. So either they're playing around. So there's three choices, right? You're doing what he asked you to do, or you're playing around, or you're literally doing nothing, just sitting and waiting because you think, well, it could be any minute. Paul addresses that in the 2 Thessalonians letters because once he's saying, be ready, be sober, be vigilant because he's coming back anytime. Some people said, oh, well then, and they're doing nothing. So in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, verse 10, he says, for even when we were with you, we commanded you this, that if anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. So if you're not working, because people were like, well, the day of the Lord's coming, so I don't need a job. I'll just sit here and. But we said, if you don't work, you will not eat. But we hear that there are some who walk among you in a disorderly manner, not working at all, but are busybodies, like they're just in everybody's business, but they're not working because they think, well, the day of the Lord's coming. So what? So now those who are such, we command and exhort through our Lord Jesus Christ that they work in quietness and eat their own bread. Stop borrowing from everybody else. Work in quietness. Do your thing. Do what you're supposed to do. But as for you, brethren, do not grow weary in doing good. Keep doing what God told you to do. And if anyone does not obey our word in this epistle, note that person and do not keep company with him. So if you're going to find that people are just going to either be drinking and messing around all the time because they think, who knows when Jesus is coming back, are those people that are doing nothing and just being busybodies and not working. He says, some of your bread. See, can I have some of your bread, please? It looked delicious. No, you can't. Get your own oil, get your own bread. So he's saying, if do not keep company with them that he may be ashamed. Just ashamed. He goes on to say, yeah, don't count him as an enemy. No, I'm just saying, don't get involved with those activities. Because when you start doing the same things that they're doing, then it's like you're condoning it. So if they're getting drunk all the time instead of doing what they're supposed to do, and you're drunk with them, then that's, or if they're not working, as you decide, and you're not working with, you're condoning it. So he says, don't keep company with them, yet don't treat them like an enemy. You don't hate them. It says, just admonish them as a brother. That's the whole point. He's not teaching you to hate people and shun them. No, just set a good example for them. You do what you're supposed to do and don't let them keep borrowing your bread. So, and that's why the virgin said, no, get your own oil. You can't, I've got my assignment and I was prepared. So you've got to get your assignment. You cannot borrow my oil and you got to get your own. So they go off to buy. And verse 10 says, and while they went to buy, the bridegroom came. And those who were ready went in with him to the wedding, and the door was shut. And afterwards, the other virgins also came, saying, Lord, Lord, open us. But he answered and said, assuredly, I say to you, I do not know you. That's just fascinating to me. But you did know them because they're friends of the bride, and she had them ready. Why is he saying, I don't know you? What is that? That's an interesting choice of words. When have we heard Jesus say that before? Back in Matthew chapter 7. So Matthew's recording all of this, right? We were looking back at Matthew 10 when he gave them their assignment and said, go out, heal the sick, but also talk about all the persecution that was going to come. Jesus' fear is that the disciples will do what some of them did and just sit around and do nothing. They went fishing. Remember, they went fishing after the resurrection. Oh, well, Jesus is gone. Let's go fishing. And they, it was like, hello, I gave you an assignment. But they locked themselves in the room. They did, because they were humans. They were real people. They reacted just like we would react. The women went to the tomb at least and said, well, I have a job I'm supposed to do. But the men were like, well, this is stupid. And so Jesus is saying, don't do that. Don't do nothing. Don't get sick. Do the assignment I gave you to do. And so Matthew's recording this. So here's what Jesus said before he gave them the assignment, because he's always teaching. In Matthew 7, verse 17, and I'm just backing up because we're recognizing those words, because the bridegroom says, no, I can't let you in because I don't know you. I think, what do you mean you don't know them? Okay, Matthew chapter 7, verse 17. So even so, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. Now that's pretty simple. He's trying to say, if the fruit in your life is good, clearly the whole tree is good. If the fruit in your life is bad, then you can look and see the whole tree is bad. Now he's talking about bearing fruit. He doesn't mean if you're rich, then that's a sign that you're doing everything right. And if you're poor, that must mean everything's wrong. He's not talking about your economic situation in life, or if you're tall, or if you're short, or if you're skinny, the fruit of the Spirit is faith, hope, love, charity, patience. If that sort of fruit is coming out of you, clearly the Holy Spirit is in you and he's coming out. And you have a good fruit because you're doing the things in the way that I told you to do them. Because it's also important that we do them in the way that he told us to do them. So you can work at a charity line, slap, boom, here's your food, now get out of here. That's not spreading the love of Jesus. So you don't get points for that. So it's important that the fruit of the Spirit is showing in our lives, right? And he's saying, and every tree, if the fruit is good, But if bad stuff has always happened to you, you might have to check the roots and go, there may be some bad roots here that need some pruning and taken care of. So a good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. That's simple. Every tree that does not bear good fruit, though, is thrown down and thrown to the fire. So you're either doing what I asked you to do, you're either producing, but if you're not doing, God to cut you up and throw you to the fire and go, that is so harsh, Jesus. Therefore, by their fruits, you will know them. You can look at people. And actually, he's been talking about the Pharisees and don't listen to them and don't, because they're like sheep in wolves' clothing. No, they're wolves in sheep's clothing. Sheep in wolves' clothing. That'd be really cool. I think I'll put on this wolf clothing and just walk up and see if I can scare you. No, they are wolves dressed like sheep. So be careful because you will know, he says. Now, this is the very next verse 21 of Matthew 7. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father in heaven. So people talk a good talk. Oh, yes. Oh, hallelujah. Yes, praise his holy name. And, God is good all the time. They know all the things to say. They can say it, but they're not doing it. So not everyone who says, oh, Lord, or Jesus, or not everyone who wears a cross or carries a Bible. It says, but those who do the will of my Father in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, when they come and knock on the door, let me in, right? Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in your name, cast out demons in your name, and done many wonders in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. So here's what he's saying. He compares to saying, I don't know you. If you're not doing what I asked you to do, then I don't know you. So there'll be people who say, I cast that out of you, and that God didn't tell you to do that. You're just doing that to show off, or you're doing that because you don't like that person's personality. A friend of mine had her personality cast out of her. A man came up and just basically named every part of her personality. That spirit of being smart, and that spirit of smiling and laughing at the wrong joke. And that's just stuff that he did not personally like about her. He's trying to, he might as well have said, oh, I'm about to give her name away. But, spirit of that Mary Jane, come out of her, because he just didn't like her. God never told him to do that. None of that was God. Lord, didn't we cast out demons? No, I didn't tell you to do that. Didn't we heal No, none. You were making stuff up for just your own reasons. So he says, you're going to come and say, we prophesied in I didn't give you that prophecy. We heard prophecies this last couple of years. And God's going to do this and God's going to do that. That didn't happen. God didn't. And it sounded spiritual and you wept and you cried and you danced and you do all this stuff. Never happened because God did not say that. So you prophesied in my name and called on the angels from Africa. And the angel's like, I'm got an assignment here. Why do I need to come over there? Why can't you use the angels from Kansas? They're much closer.
Stranger danger.
I don't know you. But Jesus saying, I don't know you. If I did not tell you to do that, you can prophesy all you want. You can cry. I mean, you think you're doing it, but I never put that in you. So I don't know you. I only know those who are doing what I ask them to do. So I don't know you. We don't have a relationship. And people have a relationship with the Bible, but not with God. They have a relationship with their church, but not with God. So they can, I go to church every day. But do you know, God's been trying to talk to you for the longest and you haven't been paying any attention. I read the Bible, but God's been trying to, he wants to have a relationship with you. So do you talk to him? Are you listening to his voice or just a voice that you've made up in your head? So he says, because if you're not doing what I told you to do, I don't know you. She said, then will I declare to them, I never knew a department, you who practice lawlessness, meaning you're your own law. I'm trying to write my law in your heart and you're doing your own thing. Therefore, verse 24, whoever hears these sayings of mine and does them, I will liken him to a wise man. So you're wise, maybe has the wise virgins and the foolish ones. They were doing what I asked them to do. And the rain descended on and the floods came. He built his house on the rock, right? The wise man. And when persecution came and all that stuff came, the winds blew, beat in the house. It did not fall because it was founded on the rock. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour. Oh, I'm sorry. That's how Jesus ended. He ends everything the same way, basically. So he's saying, when they knock on the door, the oil is us doing the will of God. It's being prepared because we're talking to him, we're praying, we have a relationship with him. And then when suddenly we're called to go into action and let our light shine and take our lights and do what we're supposed to do, we're prepared because we've been with him. We've been talking with him. We've been listening to his voice. We've been getting teaching if we can't. We've been doing things. We've been giving. Whatever he's asked us to do, whatever he's asked, you've been doing it. So now we are filling our beacon with oil whenever we are obedient to him, whenever we're listening to him, whenever we're talking to him. That's the oil of preparation, so that when he calls on us, we're ready to go. But if we haven't, if we have spent no time with him, some people just go, their time with God is the hour they're spending at church. And the other 425 hours of the week, I don't know how many hours are in a week. Okay, probably in the 200s, right? 300s. Anyway, but the other 298 hours of the week, they're doing their thing, and that they give God 1 hour where they just sit and listen to the preacher. The preacher's done all the work. He's gone home and studied, and then you just, I sat at church, so God's so proud of me. No, he's not. He's going to say, I don't know you. You're totally unprepared. So when the assignment comes, when the bridegroom comes into your life and asks you to move and do, you won't be, how do I recognize your voice? I'm not prepared. I don't know how you. So the oil is our preparation. We must be ready, staying ready, talking to him every day, praying to him, just getting to know his voice, doing what we feel like he's commanded us to do. And then when the bridegroom comes, we will have oil in our lamp. So he finishes by saying to them, I don't know you, even though you were asked to come by the bride. I don't know you because you've never done one thing I asked you to do. Watch, therefore, he says at the end of the parable about the virgins, for you know neither the day nor the hour in which the Son of Man is coming. And so that's what we're supposed to do. Just watch. Just be careful. But watch means just stay prepared. Stay in his presence. Just stay every day. Then you're good. You're good. You're nothing catches you by surprise. He will warn us of things to come. Something will tell you, you ought to fix that that spare in your car. Well, I don't know, my tires look pretty good. No, I'm telling you, you need to fix that spare. Okay. And you fix the spare. And then when suddenly your tire goes flat, thank goodness I fixed that spare. I was prepared because I was spending time with him. We spend time with him, and the little voice says, I think you should take an umbrella today. Our little voice says, you should go give a sandwich to that person over there. Just little things just move us to do stuff. And then when something shocking happens, that person who we gave that sandwich to comes up and says, oh, by the way, I happen to be a millionaire, and that was so sweet of you that you gave me that sandwich. And now here I'm going to bless you in this way. And it's like, ooh, isn't that nice that I did that thing? I guess that was God preparing me. So we're prepared for whatever comes our way because we're staying in his presence. We're listening to his voice. We're not making stuff up, but we're listening to his and moving when he moves, when he tells us to move. And that way we've got oil in our lamp. Okay, so I'm going to end there, and we'll go on to the next parables. It gets more interesting as we go. And then he's going to divide the sheep from the goats, and that's one of my favorites. Okay, so thank you so much. I will talk to you again on Sunday school. We are in Genesis, talking about when the covenant was first given. And interesting enough, we're in Matthew, when Jesus is saying, and now we're ending it. I am the fulfillment of that covenant, that promise that was made to Abraham and his seed. I'm his seed, and I'm ending it. And so it's just interesting bookends. So thank you again for listening in, and I will, and thank you those of you who said, yes, we heard you. I appreciate that. And I will talk to you next week. All right, bye-bye.